Good afternoon, all. A little change of pace today. We are not doing an evening webinar just because sometimes it's nice to have variance in the schedule for both those who are listening and those who are delivering. Well, there's only one deliverer. But either way, welcome back. We're almost at the halfway point of, geez, 2025. It's rolling along pretty quickly. You have a flow or an iteration of different themes, evolving themes, focusing on different things. And the first part of the year was very condition body system specific. And Jeff and I actually sat down and we talked about understanding the demographics, the analytics a little bit better for the company. And something really hit us hard. Something really quickly evolved was our ability to understand our demographic better, who's buying and who's buying on behalf of others. But also, it gave us this idea to think about how do we frame things in terms of product usage, demographic splits between age categories or decades more specifically. And the thing that really came through was that there's an incredible amount of information that upholds or I should say, bestows the virtues of this company that we don't really talk about. So I want to use that as a little bit of an introduction today, and I want to get into our Through the Ages part one. So seeing part one, you can probably assume that there's going to be at least a part two. This is a three-part series. So we're going to do 2 decades at a time, although the last decade, which will start at 60s and go onwards, will be 60s until end of life. And there will be different focuses and different emphases on what we're talking about based upon the demographic splits we see, and also the relevant information that we actually feel is useful to those people given the age categories. This is a very product-heavy webinar because what we want to do is we want to give people more insights as to what the products do for them and how to utilize the products given circumstances in their lives. So a lot of great stuff to go through today. I'm going to try to do it fairly quickly to respect everyone's time. But this is the thing that we don't often mention. So much of success nowadays is down to marketing, and so much marketing is down to storytelling, is down to the ability to capitalize upon trends, to effectively communicate things to people so they can understand the depths of what's going on in a very simplistic way. Not a ton of marketing in the health space really talks about customer testimonials. And as I said, this was spurred on by the fact that we don't talk about it, but we have so many five-star reviews from real people, both practitioners and individuals, who are just using the specific products or a combination of products, and it's been so impactful for them to the point where it's changed their lives that they're not getting anything to do this stuff. And we have dozens upon dozens of five-star reviews from this year alone, going all the way back to 2024 and before. So it got us thinking about our client base and how they're using their product. So the goal of this Through the Ages webinar is to go through the three parts. Obviously, we're starting today what I call the real golden years, because unfortunately, the golden years in 2025, that age category is synonymous with chronic degenerative diseases and unfortunately all-cause mortality. So to me, the golden years are the early opportunities, which is not our biggest demographic, but is becoming a more popular demographic, especially for those who are wanting to maintain their health, which is a key theme of today. And the important part about understanding this whole paradigm of 20s all the way up to your 70s and beyond, they're interdependently linked. They're mutually exclusive, meaning that if you're someone in your 20s and 30s and you are coming out of your age of invincibility in your teen years, you might start to realize that things don't necessarily work or feel as they used to. Or if you're someone in your 40s and 50s and you may be thinking back, oh, if only I did something differently in my 20s and 30s, I wouldn't be dealing with such and such condition or disease state. And if you're in your 60s and 70s, you're very much trying to recapture the youth and the vibrance that you felt in your earlier years, because life is precious. Time is the most valuable resource that we have. So it's really about understanding how all of these set up your future. No matter where you are, you can do something to improve your situation, your state of health today into the future. Because if we use it as an analogy, if anyone's ever shot a gun before, not condoning shooting guns, but follow me on the analogy. If you aim a gun 2 inches to the left, 300 yards down the line, you might miss the target by 6 feet. How that analogy is relevant to someone in their 40s and 50s is if you make a massive life change and you're symptomatic in terms of some kind of presentation of your health declining, small changes can be the difference between you getting a chronic degenerative disease in your 60s or actually missing it altogether and reclaiming your health. It doesn't take massive aspects of change, but it does take commitment to the path. And when it does come to trilogies, I don't want to oversell how good this is going to be, but we do like to live to a high standard. So I'm hoping there can be a fifth square introduced to this wonderful quadrant. I love The Dark Knight. Actually, I love all of these trilogies. Star Wars really milked the trilogy thing, multiple go-rounds. Bravo. So I want to introduce the idea of what determines the concept of aging and health span. And what I mean by health span is lifespan is the number of years you live, health span is the number of years you have your health. Unfortunately, health span is shrinking more rapidly than ever to the point where the lack of health that people used to display in their fifth and sixth decade of life is becoming a common occurrence to see in their third and fourth decade of life. So I'm delineating these two into what's called chronological aging. This is how many birthdays you've had. Doesn't matter, your chronological age is your chronological age, no matter how many people you tell you've been 39 for 5 years, or if you get your fake ID scratched and you're a kid, you are the age that the calendar says you are. However, biological age is how your physiology is operating. Specifically, you can look at that through a number of different markers. You can do a telomere length test. You can do a VO2 max test because they're correlated with different age range categories based upon how fit you are. You can do an autonomic nervous system assessment to some degree to see if your nervous system is regulating like that of someone who's younger than you. Regardless of how you determine what your biological age is, the one truth is when chronological age exceeds biological age, we sustain health longer and improve our overall quality of life, and we reduce the likelihood of developing a disease. If you're 40 years old, but you're operating like a 30-year-old, you are ahead of the game. So regardless of what your calendar of birthdays say, your physiology is not going to necessarily be at the same place. The assumption is one to one. At 30, I feel like a 30-year-old. At 40, I feel like a 40-year-old. But even that is a very subjective analysis. The ultimate goal for health is the longer you can maintain your vitality, no matter how old you get, you feel better because you're less likely to develop an illness or an issue. So, what compromises one's biological age in relationship to their chronological age? These things are very simple. All of the things that are called energy takers, being too sedentary, not prioritizing your quality of sleep, smoking, diet. I mean, stress is the biggest driver. We could also layer in there, lack of strategic supplementation, injuries, traumas, various things that essentially take life force away from you. And the inverse of that is also true. The positive influences are everything that increase your body's ability to be more self-integrated. What I mean by self-integrated is it makes more energy because you carry oxygen more optimally. You digest your food better and you make better food choices. You go to bed and you optimize and regulate your circadian rhythm. You manage your stress by having healthy outlets, using breathing techniques, or do some sort of stress management technique that allows your nervous system to not chronically be running from the proverbial tiger or bear. And I think this sums it up better as to what happens to us because I'm almost out of this 30s category. So putting this together was very relevant for me to take stock of my own life and my own patterns of existence. In your 20s, you learn. In your 30s, you earn. And why I think this is a relevant thing is 30s seem to be the decade where if we don't clean things up and we continue to live like we did in our 20s in a sense of not starting to prioritize health and recovery rather than utilizing of our energy, that's when things start to go awry. And I think these are absolutely hilarious. I'll give everyone a second just to take stock of that. My favorite is on the left-hand side. No matter what you do in a party, someone's always vomiting, but it's probably not your best friend when you're in your 30s. So this is the reality of what happens, right? There's a natural shift of what we prioritize, what we deem valuable. And if we can accept the phase of our lives that we're in and not cling on to what was because we haven't, decided who we are and how we choose to live our life, Aging can become a fun thing. I so much more enjoy my 30s than I did my 20s because I understand so much more of how to navigate this world. And this is really the biggest difference that people forget. They forget that time goes by and they may have a perspective or a perception, rather, of being stuck in time. 20s, fitness requirements, eat anything, drink anything, light exercise is optional, get off the couch once in a while. 30s, nope, I'm going to double down on biohacking. I'm going to do every test possible. I'm going to order every supplement that I see on YouTube that tells me that I'm going to shed body fat and cleanse my colon and extend my telomeres. You never want to get into the option of feeling like you're in a state of lack. You're facing an inevitable shrinking window. Ideally, what someone does is they develop optimal habits and they allow those optimal habits to evolve as they understand that, unfortunately, regardless of what you do, physiology as you age does not stay static. But I had an old mentor that once told me maintenance is progress. And what that means is if at the age of 50, you're as capable as you were at the age of 45, technically you've made progress because you should be on the decline, all things being equal. So what the 20s and the 30s offer us is this experience of of physiologic health and vitality. So these are the prime physical years, things like hormone profiles, blood panels, salivary hormone analyses. Anytime someone does an anti-aging medical protocol, be it hormone balancing, interventional endocrinology, they typically look at the peak values between the age of 21 and 30. Why? Because that's when physiology is supposed to be at its best. We'll talk about why that is becoming a thing of the past a little bit later. It's also an optimal time in life to take risk and start families because technically you have most of your life ahead of you. But once we start on that path, the amount of change that happens between 20 and 30 is massive. You start to sacrifice yourself for the attainment and the betterment of your sense of well-being. And oftentimes when people start sacrificing themselves, they do so unconsciously and insidiously. And what they give up to gain is their health. And it's the one thing that is really hard to get back as you age because your window of regainable vitality becomes lesser and lesser the more you utilize it as you age. So the lack of perspective that most people have in their 20s and 30s to set up a future health reality doesn't hit them until something really intense happens. Happened to me in my early 30s. I was bitten by a tick, massively changed my life moving forwards because for the first time in my life, I faced the story of not feeling invincible in my own reality. And I started to feel different than I expected to. And it really throws someone off when something doesn't feel right if it's a huge part of how they perceive themselves. And in that 20 and 30 demographic, we found there were three main categories that emerged. The first category is the place that hopefully everyone is if they have been somewhat self-aware and have had good habits bestowed upon them when they were younger. The proactively healthy people. These are the ones that use health as a guiding principle. The unconscious lens of how they look through life is through a perspective of health all the time. The personal care products they use, the internal environment that they live in, even down to where there may be lots of cell phone towers around their house or not, might be a factor in choosing a home to raise a family in. The second category we see are our weekend warriors, and this extends from amateur athletes, youth athletes, up until the pros that I've been very fortunate to work with and have really used our products quite successfully in helping pro athletes manage recovery under the rigors of sport and competition. And the third category, which is the category that needs the most help, are what I call the rapidly aging. These people are chronologically young, but biologically much older than the number of birthdays they've had. And what you see in this group is the people who express early onset conditions that are typically reserved for people 50 to 100% older than they are. And this is really hard because a lot of these people have their youth taken away from them for a while until they can actually regain it by finding the right practitioner, the right products, the right protocols, and the right changes of lifestyle in order for them to regain their birthright of being a healthy individual. So these are the three that we're going to really be examining through the lens of products that we've chosen that can be strategically and rationally placed in these categories that can give you guys the insights that may be useful for yourselves if this is your specific crowd selected, or for your clients if you work with these people. Statistically, most people are probably going to see more people over the age of 40 in a health clinic than under the age of 40. But from what I'm hearing from colleagues and also what I'm experiencing in my own world, those numbers are rapidly changing because if you think about it, the planet we live on, as healthy as you want to be, if the planet we live on is not optimally set up to harmonize that health based upon how society and environment is set up, then even the proactively healthy crowd is experiencing things that are challenging these days. So let's dive into that. And I wanted to start this with a testimonial that resonated with each category. So first, when I heard about the products, I called the company to inquire which products could help me best. The customer service agent was very helpful. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Blake. The probiotic is fantastic. I have tried many products over the years and nothing has worked this well. There is no intestinal distress. Healthy people can still experience intestinal distress every so often. If anyone has ever gone on a vacation to an international, faraway land before, and they have eaten something that they wished they didn't when they were clutching the toilet mat at 3 a.m., vomiting or puking into the toilet, this is a fact of life. And that's where sometimes supplements can be selective under conditions of, unaccustomed expectation. So it's very important to know that even healthy people experience deviations from norm, and using supplements strategically plus additional lifestyle factors can bring them back into balance faster because those long-term health assaults can actually layer up and cause long-term duress if that issue is not cleared up. When looking at the healthy lifestyle group, I did say before that health is the guiding principle or the guiding light in which all major aspects of life decisions are made. So these are the people that will go to farmers markets. They will choose organic food if at all possible. In their house, they probably have some sort of air filtration device, some sort of water filtration device. They have specific lights. I'm pretty much describing what I do at home. And they use supplementation proactively. So they could use it reactively if something acute happens. They don't feel well. They take some vitamin A, some vitamin C, maybe some echinacea if they get sick, a probiotic if they have a stomach thing. But fundamentally, supplementation is a proactive thing designed to support and optimize and maintain their health because unfortunately, life seems to be trying to take it away from you. And these days, exercise is part of this routine. So exercise is done for how it can help synergize and supercharge health. So these are the products that are most commonly used for the proactive people. And Theralac Pro is still our gold standard probiotic. I would go as far to say it is the gold standard probiotic in terms of efficacy on the entire market because of what it offers people and what it can really do for you functionally. So the way I look at this is the OG, right? The original digestive system support. It's a probiotic designed to support both the small and large intestine based upon the strains that are inhabiting the capsules. Lactobacillus dominance for the small intestine, bifidobacterial dominance for the large intestine, because we did our research in understanding the blueprint of how the digestive system, generally speaking, organizes itself from a microbiome perspective. The thing Theralac Pro does best is dysbiosis management. Because of its potency, because of how its deep delivery system is able to work in the body, it can really have a strong effect even at a small dose, not even taken every day, if someone is dealing with dysbiosis and taken as a long-term maintenance plan. The original suggestion for healthy people was take 2 or 3 of these a week. You do not have to take it daily, nor do you have to take a mega dose daily, because again, high dose probiotics are typically promoted post antibiotic use for repletion, but you don't want to overstress your immune system by introducing artificial levels of bacteria because you think more is better. More is obviously more, but it's not always better, especially in the case of the microbiome because each person is unique. So what Theralac Pro does is really tries to promote the optimal native microbiome environment for the person. And even though it says 50 billion CFU guaranteed through expiration, it's actually stronger than that on average right after encapsulation. So the dosage potency is greater than that we advertise, It's just after the expiration date, you're still guaranteed to have, at bare minimum, 50 billion CFU per capsule. What we do differently is what makes this product set itself apart from everything else in the industry. Designate all the strains so we know what the strains do when they're in an environment in isolation, but also when they're interacting with the immune system and other microbes. We have the deep delivery system of sodium alginate, which allows us to get past the claim that Lactobacillus and Bifido are very fragile strains, therefore they do not actually survive the trek through the system. Well, yes, that is a thing unless you have a strain designated probiotic. There's an expedited replication, meaning we have the ability to send the probiotics into the system with food. So you wouldn't drop your kids off at school without a lunch. You don't want to supplement a probiotic if you don't give it the nourishment to allow itself to wake up and basically revegetate and become an active member of a microbiome. So the deep delivery system plus the amount of food that's sent with them increases the speed of replication, which inhabits the gut quicker and therefore has a greater effect on what happens inside your microbiome. And as I said before, guaranteed through expiration. This pairs really well with sun fiber. Most people think fiber and poop. You would not be wrong, but not all fibers are created equal. The slogan in my head is feed the good guys, not the bad guys, because sun fiber is designed to fortify the microbiome by supporting, directly feeding the innate, hard to grow species of bacteria, specifically Bifido, and the cofactors of how those microbes influence the microbiome through optimally anchoring the internal environment, because the germ theory says the germ's the problem. The terrain theory says the terrain is the issue. The terrain theory is really what's actually going on inside of someone's gut when they're dysbiotic. If they're able to harbor pathogens, overgrowths of fungi, so on and so forth, it's because the internal environment in the gut is not suited for health. Only pathogenic bacteria can survive in the sewer system. And most fiber supplements for people create a lot of negative experiences because the symptomatology of bloating, gas, distension, the greasy stools, the unfortunate flatulates that could clear a room, and oftentimes the brain fog from taking things like pure inulin or what have you is because they might feed both good and bad guys. And if someone is dysbiotic and they're taking a fiber supplement thinking they're doing something beneficial for themselves, they might be shooting themselves in the foot out of ignorance. Why sun fiber is different is because its molecularly appropriate size allows it to be what's the strategically targeted food for certain kinds of species in the gut that we want to feed. So feeding the good guys is of understanding what it is they eat and making sure that you can get it to them. And what's wonderful for the recalcitrant supplement crowd is if you sneak sun fiber into a smoothie, into a soup, into a beverage, they won't know unless they see the cloudiness as it dissolves because it's tasteless, colorless, and odorless. It is a low FODMAP soluble fiber. So what it does not do is provide a bulking agent for stool like an insoluble fiber does, but it directly helps to improve things like gastric motility by supporting short chain fatty acid production, providing you have a healthy microbiome population in the first place. And the third product, and this is very important for my friends north of the Mason-Dixon line, is D3zyme. So you can replete vitamin D deficiency, which is still one of the most widespread issues, but you can maximize absorption when taken with food because vitamin D3 is a fat-soluble vitamin. So you need to ensure that you have the appropriate carrier in the meal that you're supplementing it with, as well as the ability to digest and break that food down so you can maximally absorb. So you have a therapeutic dose of vitamin D3, 5,000 IUs per capsule, with a full complement of digestive enzymes to make sure that you're getting all of your food broken down, assimilated, and absorbed, because the supplement that you don't absorb is only as good as its ability to actually get into the bloodstream. And for those north of the border, and I will even say south of the border, because most of us live the lives of an indoor cat these days with going to work in an office, from driving there in our car after waking up in our homes. The only way you can make vitamin D from the environment is to be outside in the sun between 10 a.m. to about 2 p.m. In the northern hemisphere, this does not even allow you to make vitamin D probably from October all the way to, let's say, early to late March, depending upon where you live. So for those listening up in Minnesota, you know who you are. Make sure that you get your vitamin D levels checked as the summer ends, because if you're not outside at optimal times, it's very easy to become vitamin D deficient. Vitamin D deficiency is always correlated with immune system dysfunction because vitamin D is more like a hormone really than it is a vitamin. So that's the proactively healthy crowd. Now we're switching gears to the weekend warriors, the athletes, those who prioritize health and fitness as their guiding principle, which is a different way of emphasizing healthy habits and strategies in your life, because there's still no better silver bullet, if you will, when it comes to health than appropriately prescribed and executed exercise. And this testimonial perfectly fits that. Started taking Cerezyme and Therazyme about a month ago. My naturopath recommended it to me for scar tissue and muscle repair. Apparently, for this person, it worked amazingly. Very happy with the results. I work out now and don't feel any tenderness. I'm very excited to have found these supplements. So, this group is slightly different from the proactively healthy crowd. Their nutrition and lifestyle is probably a little bit more driven by energy metabolism, body composition, performance, and recovery. But generally speaking, the same health habits are there. Their home environment and personal care products are probably more thinking about a home gym than they are necessarily what kind of skin cream and various things they're putting on, but it's still a commitment to being healthy, because to be fit, you must be healthy first. Supplementation is all around recovery and performance for the most part. So these are the people who will probably walk into the gym with various powders and things in their gym bag that they're taking in the locker rooms, or they're shaking up and taking onto the gym floor with them. And it may be more than just about exercise. It might be training, competition, and recovery, because a competitive athlete or a weekend warrior subjects their bodies to more stress than the average person does if they're training hard. Exercise is a stress on the body. And why exercise is beneficial is if that stress is appropriate to the person and what their tolerances are, that's what generates the improvement. The small amount of stress creates a hormetic response that the body supercompensates for and gets stronger, gets faster, gets better at delivering oxygen to tissues. If that training is excessive, and I have a couple clients who are in the NHL playoffs right now, what they're having to deal with is finding a way to recover more quickly so their performance can bounce back as fast as they want it, because if they're under recovered, performance goes down and risk for injury goes up. This is where I start most of my athletes, and I think is really important to consider that the average person who is active needs to eat more food than the average person who is not. And eating food does not necessarily mean digesting and absorbing food, especially if you're under duress. So why not use 23 complementary digestive enzymes that really do focus on the main fuels of high intensity exercise, protein and carbohydrate digestion, with a blend of astrazyme for enhanced efficacy, because astrazyme offers the micronutrient nutrition that becomes the cofactor for enzyme activation. People forget that if you don't have a cofactor for an enzyme, that enzyme can't do its job effectively because it needs an activation molecule, which is typically a mineral in the case of an enzyme. So what Digestzyme Plus and Digestzyme do is they offer multi-stage protein and carbohydrate digestion by having different kinds of protein and carbohydrate digesting enzymes, including some fiber digesting enzymes for people who are sensitive to such things. You also have multi pH fat digestion, having a lipase 1 and a lipase 2 helps to digest fat in different pH ranges, because if you remember what we've talked about before from the digestive system, the pH changes as things are moving through the tube, and you want to make sure that the enzymes that are doing the work are most optimally suited to the environment where that work is done. That's what essentially a digestive enzyme does. It takes the burden off of the body to allow the body to do more using less energy. And I often pair this with Therazyme. So Therazyme is kind of the Cadillac proteolytic enzyme formula. What I mean is it's the combination formula. And as a combination formula, it doesn't have as high a therapeutic dose as the single ingredient formulas, but it is a multi-body system targeted formula that does require an empty stomach for optimal use. What does empty stomach mean? Well, it's either half an hour to 45 minutes before food. So you want that capsule to break open in the liquid environment of your stomach before food comes in, or else it becomes an expensive protein digesting enzyme, or 2 to 3 hours after food, depending upon the size of meal that you've eaten. Proteolytic enzymes are very complicated to people who have not become familiar with them, but they are actually quite easy in how they work. If you take this proteolytic enzyme on an empty stomach, it doesn't digest protein like a digestive enzyme does. It actually gets directly into your bloodstream by getting absorbed through the digestive lining. It finds a way to circulate among the circulatory system of the arteries, usually attaches itself to a protein or some kind of white blood cell. It gets delivered to the site of action depending upon where the protein digesting enzyme works. So if it's nattokinase, it's in the cardiovascular system. If it's CPROS, it's in the mucosal lining of the respiratory system, and then it performs its action. Typically, what the action is trying to address some sort of immune activated issue that's causing the body to experience oxidative stress and inflammation. And like using with digestive enzymes, we use astrozyme for that co-activation optimization. So the protein digesting enzymes can do the maximal amount of work to take the burden off of the immune system so that the body can hopefully more quickly resolve the issue that's driving the dysfunction within the tissues. These are our three informed sport products, and I do think it's really important to mention this if you are an athlete or a young athlete aspiring to become pro, because the minute you get to the college ranks and to the pro ranks, everyone becomes randomly tested for banned substances. So by having the informed sport certification, and if you do work with athletes, very few products in the sport nutrition world at all deal with anything except sport performance. You find creatine, you find protein powders, amino acids, multivitamins. You find very few digestive products. There are becoming more probiotics, but again, they're not as well thought out as a formulation as Theralac. And there are very few recovery products and absolutely nothing like Therazyme. Specifically, anecdotally, I've seen bumps in Oura Ring scores and Whoop scores with athletes using Therazyme. I've helped a couple different athletes recover quickly from a surgery, one to the point where their doctor had no idea how they were so far ahead of schedule. But you need to use these things on a regular basis, specifically their proteolytic enzymes, because time needs to go by so they can do their job. It's not an overnight thing. And then there's protein powders, meal replacements, and stuff of this nature. Proteinzyme does not get a lot of love or promotion in the sports world because most people don't probably know it exists, or they go to a sports nutrition store, which more promotes single protein products, whey protein, stuff of that nature, which again has its uses, but proteinzyme is so much more. Let's say you have you're in your 20s and 30s and you're having a hard time feeding your kids, but they love smoothies. This is a great base for a meal replacement. Let's say you're someone who has an active lifestyle but not a lot of time and they want something post-workout to replenish the protein that they need to recover, but they want something that's a high quality plant-based protein. Here you go. In addition to the fact that there is a protein source in here, there's a lot of nutrition density. And we're unfortunately calorically overfed in a nutritionally deficient world. So the thing that I always teach my clients about is the calorie to nutrient ratio. For every calorie I'm putting in my system, do I get an associated vitamin, mineral, antioxidant, essential fatty acid correlate that makes those calories more beneficial for my overall state of health? Well, in this case, you do, and you can use these and actually use it as a base and add to it to make a more complete meal replacement because you have a high quality protein base. You have a combination of fruit and vegetable micronutrition. So you get the micronutrients plus the antioxidants, the flavonoids, all the different pigmentation and non-calorie containing nutrition that's in the vegetable and fruit extract. You also get a dose of sun fiber. You get 4 strains of probiotics and astrozyme. So all you need to do is add this to a base of something, add some more fruit or some raw honey, some maple syrup for some healthy sweetness. You can add some essential fatty acids, some MCT oil, half an avocado to bring up the healthy fats, and you have a complete meal that is something that is not only beneficial for recovery, but it is nourishing and healthy overall for you as the person or the individual, the child that you have, the person who's learning to become a healthier eater, but their taste buds haven't quite caught up to the fact that, oh, this doesn't taste like a chocolate bar. This doesn't taste like candy. This is a really good way to bridge the gap. And Therazyme pairs well with Cerezyme, especially for the purpose of injury regeneration, because this is a therapeutic dose of a single enzyme, whereas Therazyme, TH, was a broad spectrum lower dose. This is where when you want to target something very specific. So Cerezyme focuses on breaking down connective tissue, although there are some research articles that I've read that talk about its ability to break up biofilms, to have some degree of efficacy in the gut, some degree of efficacy in helping to improve circulatory and cardiovascular health. But what most people know it for, and where I think the most robust research is surrounding, is connective tissue health. And the same rules apply to Cerezyme as all proteolytic enzymes. It's an empty stomach product only. So where this works well is for old sports injuries, torn ligaments, cartilage issues, connective tissue like ligaments and tendons. We also have to understand that there's a connective tissue component to every tissue in the body. It's called the ground matrix. Fascia is another aspect of connective tissue. So this can be used as an aid in the detoxification program to help the body break things down, because when detoxifying the body, which is a little outside the sports realm, you're oftentimes having to detoxify things that are stored in the connective tissue. And we had one lady who, I believe she was in a car accident, and she was recovering from that, and she was taking Cerezyme for about 2 to 3 months. And a little graphic display of information here, but she said at one point she started smelling this really foul smell coming out of her urine as she started to feel dramatically better. So what was happening there was probably detoxifying old physical trauma and broken connective tissue, but the system-wide aspect of support that Cerezyme gets, plus potentially some cardiovascular and digestive benefits, really makes it quite a superstar when it comes to helping the body heal. Again, something that you're not going to take one capsule and feel a massive difference. We're talking months of regular supplementation, oftentimes going above the suggested serving of one capsule per person. And now we get into the crowd that is not so much fun to talk about, because this is the unfortunate reality of what I'm seeing and other practitioners are seeing more and more in younger stages of life. And I believe this is kind of twofold. There are people that are experiencing a loss of vitality at a younger age, and the reasons for that are likely multifactorial. And there are those who are unwilling to give up what it is that knowingly takes vitality away from us, which is staying up late, partying, alcohol, drug use, not prioritizing sleep, not prioritizing diet, high stress lifestyles, and focusing outside of themselves rather than focusing on health as a foundational principle of their existence. This is one that resonated. I don't know how old this person is for full stop, but these are the things that are happening to people because before they have full-blown issues, symptoms dominate their life in terms of those symptoms being something that are compromising their well-being. So this is about HCL. Excellent product that actually works as promised, not to mention quick delivery. Our shipping department is amazing. I have a twisted and irritable bowel. Very challenging scenario. This condition comes with overactive gas and bloating. My friend owns a health supplement shop and recommended HCL, so I tried it and it worked extremely well for me. I was actually shocked. I've tried so many products that I've lost count. This really does happen to us quite often from what our customer service people hear when they're having conversations with people. I'm not so fearful about eating now. I ordered 3 more bottles because I do not want to run out. It was also very affordable, which we try to make our products as affordable, but also as high quality as we possibly can. I want to thank you, Master Supplements, and my friend. I am not in so much pain and discomfort. Plus, HCL Zyme works quickly. You do not have to wait weeks for the results. Do not be afraid to try it. It actually delivers and promise. So when someone faces chronic health challenges in this phase of their existence, it basically means that the rate of injury is exceeding the rate of repair. Acute issues in this age range are things we discussed before. food poisoning, catching illnesses, injuries, things of that nature. But it's usually the acute issues when added up in terms of a large quantity of them in a short period of time that exceed the body's ability to tolerate such things, and therefore the chronic issues start to manifest in this age range. We're seeing people with a host of immune challenges, young kids all the way up to 30s, autoimmune things, things of that nature. I have one client, poor girl at the age of 25, walked into my office and told me she had 9 autoimmune conditions, not to mention the psycho-emotional labeling that layers itself upon that. And unfortunately, these people are aging more rapidly than their calendar age suggests. And you can imagine what the end result of that would be in terms of quality of life if left unchecked, because at 25, you still have enough vitality to manage these scenarios, but you don't want to start collecting diagnoses and disease. So this product list is not the way you deal with these things, but they're potential approaches and utilizations of these products from a more global perspective in the person's reality, because when it comes to these scenarios, there's the disease, the diagnosis, and where it shows up, but there's also how the body is trying to manage the disease from a perspective of loss of homeostasis, shall we say. This is my model that I use to teach people and also use as a model of understanding as to why things go wrong in people. To me, energy is everything. Energy is life, and energy levels allow for a greater amount of adaptability. If we have a high amount of energy and a high amount of adaptability, we should have optimal function from a physiologic perspective. But this is a bidirectional pathway that can break down when we exhaust our adaptability. Because when we shrink our window of adaptability, we lose energy. If we lose energy, we can't flow this into optimal function. And if so, we start to become susceptible to the manifestations of issues, diseases, and conditions. To me, optimal function is defined by the 4 things that I have listed here. So you have self-identification. The body needs to know itself. The body needs to be able to regulate itself. This is where things like the nervous system and the hormones come in. Identification is really all about the immune system. Self-compensation is the body's auto-corrective capabilities, and self-regeneration is the body is the thing that heals itself. The energy that creates the body is the energy that heals the body. And a good practitioner knows how to work with the body rather than trying to override it, as unfortunately Western medicine does by using pharmacology to treat diseases. They block mechanisms of action to try to not look at them so they don't have to think about them anymore. But that's not how the body heals. So some of the products that are a little bit more intentional in their use are things that focus on specific areas of the body. So sun balance and this neuroinflammation attenuation, I like how that rhymes, is really the management of what's going on when there's inflammation, immune activation, and stress in the brain, because that's going to stress the entire nervous system, specifically the target of what's called astrocyte activation. If the brain experiences immune stress, these specialized immune cells in the brain called astrocytes activate, and they create inflammation responses, and the neurons start to behave differently. So what we have here is a combination of it's called a lipid mediator. PEA is a compound that can pass the blood-brain barrier, and it helps the body to down-regulate immune activation of the brain with additional antioxidants, quercetin and luteolin, that have somewhat of a histamine management effect. So if people feel like they have this brain on fire syndrome, which can manifest in a couple different ways. Brain on fire could be legitimate inflammation in the brain that's causing brain fog, the inability to find words, compromise short-term memory, cloudy thinking, emotional dysregulation. That's one aspect of it. Or the other could be stuck in such a fight or flight response that they're not present enough to use their brain because the body's in chronic stress. Therefore, the immune system is activated and the nervous system is in chronic stress. So this can be something for people who are deep down the rabbit hole of chronic inflammation and inflammatory conditions, because you can't heal the body if the brain is on fire. It's hard to heal the body when histamine keeps getting released, because inflammation, although beneficial acutely, you don't want to always silence inflammation. But if someone has mast cell activation syndrome or chronically reactive inflammatory responses, you have to calm down the nervous system to calm down the body. This may be a great starting point for people who are experiencing neurological challenges. And it pairs well with what I call the neuro chill. That's suntheanine. So whereas sun balance is more about trying to manage the immune activation within the nervous system, suntheanine is trying to calm the nervous system by promoting more GABA, therefore promotes more relaxation, reduces restlessness, and is really good to help condition the person to chill out in the evenings when the body is meant to be at rest, not doing something highly active, highly productive, and highly stimulatory. And what's really nice about suntheanine is it's the most pure dose of theanine that you can utilize. And what's cool about theanine is it doesn't have a toxicity profile because it's just a single dose amino acid. I think most people, with how crazy modern life is, should be using theanine as a regular evening supplementation to promote relaxation because there's not a dependency that can be built. And there's also not an issue with using a small dose of an amino acid because they really are the building blocks of life. So theanine's main job in the body is to internally downregulate what's called the production of glutamate. Glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter, and it upregulates the amount of energy that a neuron is expending. Neurons use an incredible amount of energy in the body, probably the most energy dense cells in the entire body next to liver cells or heart cells. And they increase the production of GABA, which has an opposing effect to glutamate. When someone has neurotoxicity, an excitatory state, if you can imagine a teeter-totter, glutamate's really high, GABA's really low. To relax someone, you want to increase the production of GABA and downregulate the production of glutamate. An example of ultra GABA production or response is when someone takes a benzodiazepine. So this is no, not that. It's never a replacement for that. But theanine can help your natural production. Say that again. It focuses on helping your natural production of GABA, which calms the nervous system and prepares the body for rest and recovery. And then we have Immunozyme, and I think this is one of the most underutilized products because most people are highly deficient in micronutrition nowadays, especially the fat-soluble vitamins. Because if we go back to our nutrition training, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, not there's no E in here, but vitamin K are all immune modulating or cardiovascular moderating nutrition. Vitamin K2 helps to pull calcium out of arteries. We already talked about vitamin D rather. Vitamin A, via its conversion to retinol, has effects on the activity and influence over how white blood cells can help it deal with infections. So we have essential fat-soluble nutrition. We have down-regulating, so immune-managing antioxidants, green tea extract, and alpha-lipoic acid. We also have very specific probiotic strains that are designed to do one specific thing. The entire formula here is designed to promote the regulation of T cells in the body. And a T regulatory cell is essentially, here's an analogy. If there is a house party that's broken out into a chaotic fight, the T regulatory cells are when the cops show up and defuse everything. So a T regulatory cell helps the body to resolve an inflammatory insult and bring down the inflammation so everything can go back to its optimal baseline and the body or the tissue that's been under attack can start to express health again. That's how the immunomodulating effect works in the body. And knowing the specific probiotic blends plus the targeted nutrition and the astrozyme, it's really the best combination for those who are dealing with chronic immune flare-ups, autoimmune conditions, inflammatory degenerative conditions. And it's not for the 20s or 30s only. This product will probably come back in the rest of our examination. And it also pairs really well with sulforozyme. Sulforozyme, for me, is the master regulator of the antioxidant response in the body. And from a efficacy perspective, it's a stabilized, highly pure form of sulforaphane, not a combination of the precursors like a lot of other products are. So you get maximal potency and maximal absorption from taking the direct stabilized sulforaphane itself. And what it does is it's the master regulator of what's called the NRF2 activation pathway in the body. And there's a lot out there on YouTube or Google if you want to brush up on how this thing works. But in a nutshell, NRF2 is the off switch to the inflammatory NF-kappa B. So it's the brake pedal on trying to resolve an issue in the body, providing the body's ready for that resolution. So when the pro-inflammatory activation is up, your body makes these pro-inflammatory molecules called cytokines. What cytokines do is they direct the immune system as to where to go, how to behave, and to keep behaving this way until the resolution is there. However, sometimes when the immune system is dysregulated, or when the original insult is not resolved, the body gets stuck in a chronic pro-oxidative state, and therefore oxidative stress degrades the tissues. This is where NRF2 comes in, and specifically sulforaphane, because it can upregulate the ability for the body to produce all of its endogenous antioxidants. So the oxidative environment goes back to a state of being more reduced. So it's not inflamed, the immune system calms down, and thus you might be able to help someone break out of a healing crisis and enter a healing cycle again. You can see this is a very different product suite in terms of how they're being targeted to the kind of person we're talking about. So final perspectives with all this, and I want to thank everyone for being here and giving me your time to learn all this stuff. These categories of products are not the final word in anything. So it's not a mandated perspective, approach, or protocol. It's just a way of looking through the lens of how you look through life, what your requirements are, i.e. the specific ways and the specific conditions that you can use these products as a specific approach. And for a final thought, for all the clinicians, if you're in the younger category, and this information is resonating with you and it's something that you can use for your families, don't preclude the benefits of using this information personally. If you are dealing with this age range, I really hope this was very helpful, but please do stay tuned and commit to the next part of part 2 and part 3, because you will gain more useful insights as we start to examine the conditions of life under these different decades, because things do change from proactive to a little bit more reactive in the next phase, and what I'm going to be calling anti-degenerative in the last phase. So do stay with the trilogy. Our most popular demographic is the 40s and 50s. That's what's going to be coming up next month. So I want to thank everyone for their time, for being here, for the support, and helping the company to continue to do what it is we do. We try to provide the best quality products out there and hopefully the best quality education to help you learn more about those products. I wish everyone a great final month of the first half of the year. And we will see you in early June for Trilogy Part 2. And usually trilogies are disappointing because Part 2 is never as good as Part 1. My goal is to challenge to make Part 2 even better. So have a great afternoon and evening, everyone. We'll see you soon. Thank you again.